So we don't just have one, but we have two shocking rulings from district court judges today, one blocking the Trump administration from deporting the wife and children of Mr. Soleimani. This is the alleged domestic terrorist who committed that heinous act in Boulder, Colorado. And the second one, you're going to want to hear it. And a top Democrat official in the Biden administration is now cashing in. Wait till you see who it is.
Breaking news in our national lead, a federal judge today blocked the deportations of the wife and children of the suspect in last weekend's anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado. The suspect, Mohammed Sabri Soliman, is an Egyptian national who authorities say is in the country illegally, having overstayed his visa and work permit. Now, he's charged with 16 counts of attempted murder and a federal hate crime because of Sunday's attack, which injured 12 people. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez is here now to tell us more about the order and the man's family.
Yeah, this is a very brief order, about 2 pages, but it essentially blocks the administration from deporting his family, his wife and 5 children. Now, I'm going to read just one part of this order where it says, quote, moreover, the court finds that deportation without process could work irreparable harm, and an order must issue without notice due to the urgency the situation presents. Now, that urgency is one that the White House has been talking about since yesterday evening. After this family was detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the White House was saying that their removal was essentially imminent. In fact, in one post saying that it could happen as soon as tonight, that meaning yesterday evening. So this is clearly going to put a big block in those plans because of this federal judge's order.
All right. So what do you guys need to know about this first story? Well, on the left, this is a great win for them. They're celebrating this. Why? Because they want to see the Trump administration follow a process. And the process in their eyes is making sure that all migrants, whether they're here illegally or undocumented or whatever the proper term is today, that they see a courtroom or have a legitimate hearing to plead their case. And if you're on the right, particularly the Trump administration, you hate this ruling. This ruling once again confirms what you're so frustrated about. See, President Trump was elected to get people out of our country that have no business being here. They do not have any business being here. They should be deported. The problem here is how fast should they be deported? According to the Trump administration, like that. According to Democrats, we need to slow it down. Now, here's more information about this ruling.
Now, Phil, we're also learning a little bit about the family's immigration history. It is very similar, almost exactly the same, actually, to that of the husband and father, meaning that they came in August of 2022 with a temporary visa. That visa ran up until February of 2023. But in that intervening period, they had also joined the asylum application of their father husband. So the family members have not been charged in this case, but they have been clearly the target of this administration, which has similarly said, by the way, Phil, that they wanted to talk to them as part of this investigation to see if there's anything that they knew about the father and husband. I'm
sure you're not shocked by the narrative that's coming from CNN, but before we move any further, if you guys have been getting value from our channel, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to support us further, just go to the link in the description below. You could buy us a cup of coffee. You could shop our merch store and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you listen carefully to her language, she stated that the family has been targeted by the Trump administration. And I think this speaks to the mainstream media's rhetoric around deportations. They're 110% compassion and 0% law and order. And I'll prove it to you. Look at this article that was published today by USA Today, a Michael Loria. He writes, Boulder suspect's daughter dreamed of studying medicine. Now she faces deportation. She moved to the U.S. hoping to study medicine. Then her father was charged with a hate crime and an attack aimed at peaceful Jewish demonstrators. Where are we going with that? I'm not following. Of course she's going to face deportation. They're not in the country legally. What are you talking about? Now, getting back to the merits of this ruling, let's hear what a former federal prosecutor has to say about this on News Nation. Take a listen.
What do you make of this? What does the law say about this?
Well, it tells me a couple of things, Connell. Number one, there were some early discussions as to whether or not this person acted alone in the bombings. If they're going to summarily deport his wife and his children, then they're not going to prosecute them. So to me, that means they still believe he was a lone person acting alone, carrying out his criminal activity. As for their deportation, we need to know more facts about why they are still here. Did they also overstay tourist visas? Have they applied to adjust their status here? What is the status of the children? Were any of them born here? Were they all born abroad and then came here? Did they come in together? When were they supposed to leave? What's the nature of their overstay, if there is one? like everyone, they're entitled to due process. So this federal judge has said, hold on, you may be entitled to deport them, but not summarily. Let's have a little due process here. Let's hit the pause button and let's give them a hearing so they can be advised why they're being sent out of the country.
The last point that he made there won't sit right with the Trump administration, quite frankly, won't sit right with conservatives. And I think this speaks to the overall debate that I believe seems to be missing here. See, the debate is not on whether or not somebody deserves due process. The debate is on to what degree exactly. See, if you enter the country illegally and that was your first action, breaking the law, the due process is this: we catch you, you're gone. It's that simple. Now, here is another argument that's being made on the right, and I think there's some merit to this. This is from Glenn Beck. He says, here's what haunts me about the Boulder, Colorado attack. If this had been the other way around, if a white man had firebombed a mosque while screaming ethnic slurs, this country would be on fire right now. We'd have task force, blue ribbon panels, hashtags, every anchor on every channel would wear black ties in solemn tones. But a Jewish woman in her 80s who survived the Holocaust gets burned alive by a radicalized immigrant. The media yawns and the anti-racism advocates scroll by in silence. And I would actually say that's largely true. I think mainstream media does not talk about anti-Semitism enough, not at the same degree as racism. We know that. But I can tell you right now, I see more anti-Semitism in reality physically happening than I do racism. But that's my own personal opinion. I don't know where you guys stand on this particular issue, but maybe you agree with me on that. Let me know in the comment section. Okay, so in the end, if you think that was a shocking ruling, wait till you hear this next one. And guys, I'm telling you, I don't know what's happening with this country. I'm a very optimistic person, but every time I see a ruling like this, it just makes me wonder, what is really going on here? Do people really have the American people's best interests at heart? And maybe I don't understand the Constitution, okay? Take a listen to this.
All right, here's a question I doubt many of you thought I'd ever ask. Should federal prisoners be allowed to switch genders at your expense, taxpayer expense, while in federal prison? Now, remember, that is exactly what Kamala Harris wanted for criminals and illegal immigrants. Tim Walz, he wanted free taxpayer college education for illegals. President Trump doesn't think so. So he told the Federal Bureau of Prisons to stop helping federal prisoners switch genders in prison on your dime. Today, a federal judge ruled that President Trump is not allowed to do that because he acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner. In fact, the judge is now forcing the Bureau of Prisons to provide, with your money, federal prisoners with gender transition hormones, or so-called accommodations, such as, for example, giving men women's underwear and makeup. Is this real life or is this fake?
Yeah, so there's no question this is real life because, again, the devil is at work here. And unfortunately, this woke mind virus, this idea that you can be born a man and become a woman, is definitely affecting our society, no question. And now it's in the prisons. And I'm sure you probably have heard stories of how men say, hey, I want to be a woman, and then they're transferred to a female prison, and then they get someone pregnant over there. I mean, those stories happen all the time, no question. But this entire idea about using taxpayer money to fund sex changes when we know we're not even allowing that in the military, why would we allow that in our own prisons? That's ludicrous. Now, here's a more measured response on this ruling. Take a listen.
So the judges decided to block this Trump EO that would force inmates gender care. Your reaction to it, and was this the right thing to do?
Well, you need to understand this is a preliminary ruling. First of all, this is not one of the bomb-throwing left-wing judges. This is an old-line, Reagan-appointed conservative. At most, you'd call him a moderate conservative. That's Royce Lamberth. And he didn't rule that the executive order, it's actually not a ruling, it's a ruling about BOP policy based on President Trump's executive order. And he said, I'm not going to decide on the constitutionality of the order right now, but preliminarily it looks like it violates something called the Administrative Procedure Act. And so I'm going to grant a temporary injunction, not a permanent injunction, and disallow the executive order and the policy based on it, pending the decision on the merits of the case. I'm sorry to sound so nerdy about that.
No, we
but
appreciate
it is a pretty limited decision.
So in the end, is it still a shocking ruling to me? Absolutely. Because one or two things are true. Number one, the Trump administration is moving so fast that maybe they did not think through the executive orders that President Trump signed, which is prompting these judges to issue a preliminary injunction. That might be plausible, by the way, folks. Obviously, President Trump does not write these memorandums, does not write these executive orders. We know that. But maybe the other option here is that these judges are so sensitive to President Trump and his executive orders that they're all in reaction mode, just waiting to issue some type of ruling. And again, the Supreme Court is going to need to rule on this and really provide some strict requirements when issuing injunctions. So I appreciate his response, but quite frankly, I think this whole idea that taxpayers should be paying for sex changes in prison, yeah, forget about that. Okay, let's move to the next story, which is, I don't think you'll be shocked by this. I think it's to be expected, okay? So the former White House press secretary, now she has a book, and she's talking about exactly what went down in the White House. And I believe what she's doing here is cashing in. Let's hear the announcement.
Former press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is announcing she's no longer a Democrat. She is an independent ahead of a tell-all book that's coming out this fall about the, quote, broken administration she served. KJP says she's following her own compass in an era of misinformation and disinformation. A pretty stunning development for the press secretary, who insisted over the last 4 years that the videos and images of Joe Biden at his worst were cheap fakes and deep fakes.
Yeah, so what a stunning announcement, right? She's claiming that she needs to set the record straight because this world is filled with misinformation and disinformation at this point. But I would argue that she is one of the chief founders of that exact term. I mean, I can't tell you how many times she used that exact term as White House press secretary, especially when it came to the coverage of Joe Biden, and especially when it came to the coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, before I give you my take in regards to this book, let's hear from KGP herself. Take a listen.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, you know, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy?
All right, so I had to stop it right there because I don't want to continue to hear the same talking points. I'm sure you don't either. Bottom line up front is what? Karine Jean-Pierre is claiming that she's now leaving the Democrat Party and becoming an independent. That's the rumor on the street. That's number one. Number two, she's claiming also that the Democrat Party left Joe Biden behind. And number three, this book is really about her trying to help everybody understand what's happening right now in our country and what they can do about it. And here's the bottom line to it all, folks. This is once again Democrats cashing in. Okay. Now, when President Trump cashes in, it's an issue. But when they do it, it's all good. Now, here's what Scott Jennings had to say about all this. Take a look.
I have a different view. I'd like to congratulate Democrats for ridding yourselves of this untalented mediocrity. I mean, this is the most self-aggrandizing liar that has ever held this job. The White House press secretary is a sacred position, and she stood up there for years and lied through her teeth to the American people.
My friend, she's not the first.
She is the literal worst White House press secretary in my lifetime. And what she did in the last year and a half of the Biden administration, cheap fakes, the entire cover-up around the president's mental faculties, she was in the center of it.
So you think she's doing this to launder herself?
So congratulations for getting rid of this, but Democrats deserve everything they're getting here for putting her in that job in the first place.
Well, it's clear that Scott Jennings won't be buying her book. I think that's my first point. Secondly, he's spot on. I mean, listen, I think I say this repeatedly every single day. I'm sure you're probably tired of me saying it, but listen, Democrats have zero credibility, and they continue to walk around with this smug attitude as if they know better than you. And that's the unfortunate part. I always tell you guys, I don't know everything. I get things wrong all the time. In fact, you guys correct me on a lot of things. If only Democrats had that same humility, they'd probably be in a better position today. But there's no escaping this. She was definitely at the center of the cover-up, and now she's trying to sell a book to make money. I don't understand how you square that. And get this, not all Democrats are on board. Take a listen.
What bothers me about this, and I was making some phone calls before this to a number of former Biden administration officials and people in the White House, where they were saying, this is just all an attempt to sell books. And that is what the general consensus is right now in the Democratic Party. I think it is really difficult also to hear from her and all of those clips that you just played, where she's clearly defending the president and was going out and talking about how her report and what the Justice Department was doing was gratuitous and defended the president's age up until the very end, when most of the Democratic Party was not for President Biden staying in the race. And so I think that, her job as press secretary to defend the president, but it's not necessarily to defend herself and to lift herself up. And it seems like that's what she's doing here.
Yeah, so I guess it's just unfortunate for the Biden crew, because I would say that this is probably the highest official in that administration who's finally coming out and saying something in regards to the scandal that went on. And obviously, we don't know what's in the book or what's been said. This is all just speculation based on what she has stated and what others are saying. But in the end, if she drops any type of bombshell, I mean, you think the party is damaged already. I mean, how much more damage can they do to themselves? I think there's still more. And this would be it here. Now, let me get your guys' reaction in the comment section below to these stories. Obviously, two of them have to do with judges issuing an injunction. One is a nationwide injunction, a permanent one, and a second is a more preliminary one, temporary. But in the end, do you agree that taxpayers should be funding sex changes for prisoners? And the family of Mr. Soleimani, the guy who's been accused of committing that terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, do you believe they should be deported? Let me know your thoughts about all of these stories in the comments section below. All right, so the next video that you might be interested in is what happened earlier today. Democrats are threatening to dox ICE agents. I believe this is a devastating move for the party, and also Republicans are struggling. They're still dealing with the fallout from Elon Musk and what he is continuing to say about the big, beautiful bill. If you missed out on both of these stories, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.